Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Rest from Off the Cuff. Today, I have a really cool brand new micro brand review for you guys from the brand BREMOIR. They're a micro brand that believes that the age of Art Deco from the 1920s and 30s really was a special time in the world's history, a time worth remembering. Not only was it memorable for its clean geometric designs and incredibly beautiful architecture, but for the way that life itself was lived romantically, fearlessly, and glamorously. Now, in terms of the type of watch, I'd consider this an everyday dress watch. And honestly, dress watches were kind of the original everyday watch because folks used to spend a lot of time pretty dressed up by comparison to today's more casual trends. But when you're looking for something today that can really fill that space of an everyday dress watch, of course, you're going to want that clean, classic, minimalist design and something that is sensibly sized. Now, this is in a different way. It's definitely more ornate, and I wouldn't call it minimalist. But because of the design, I think it actually does make it really versatile in a way that pops a little bit more than your average, more Bauhaus-inspired comparative. This being, of course, within the age of Art Deco, just adds a lot more fun. This is their brand. This is I think their premier watch called the Lexington, and this is a special edition known as the Montauk Dawn. It's their debut wristwatch. It's inspired by the Chrysler Building in New York City in terms of the Lexington architecture of that whole aesthetic there, as you guys can notice just kind of looking at this thing head on. But the colorway itself was inspired by the sand, sea, and sky in Montauk, New York at dawn. The unique pastel color of the dial hovers somewhere between yellow and orange, and its navy blue minute markers and font give these designs elements really beautiful contrast. And then there's that brushed copper chapter ring that sets everything on fire. Also, these leather straps that you're going to see here is actually made by Deluxe in Singapore, and you guys know those are really nice straps and quite expensive, so that's a nice bonus. And then just another thing to note is that these are assembled and QC'd by Fine Time Solutions here in the USA, which I think is a very nice touch. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, so obviously what jumps out here is the look. This is a very, very handsome watch, and don't be discouraged if those numerals look black. They actually are fully high polished and chromed out there. It's just reflecting off of course, a dark room, and right now off of a black lens on the camera. So I will say that in reality, definitely even more legible, even more contrasting there, which is a nice pop, although it can be even a little bit subdued at times, really depending on, again, kind of the lighting situation and then also the strap pairing or even down to what you're wearing. So this is not a cheap watch. This is a pretty much $1,000 watch. It goes for $985 direct, and it does have a Swiss movement in there, which I think is great. It's an STP 111, no date movement, so there's no ghost position, 44-hour power reserve, 800 vibrations per hour, or a 4 hertz beat rate. So very nice. And there's a reason I think that a lot of micro brands kind of shy away from dress watches. It's because it's hard to add a lot of objective value to a dress watch, right? Because adding water resistance, that only goes so far, right? Because you don't really need that. It's counterproductive when you want something to be thin and really wearable. And then in terms of like adding expensive features like ceramic and things like that, or titanium, it doesn't necessarily fit within that space. So it's hard to just come out and say, hey, look, I'm going to make this dress watch which competes with other dress watches, except I'm going to be a new brand. So it's really all about the design, and I think that's what BREMOIR really nailed. Is this design is fantastic, and of course the quality is really great. So 39 millimeter diameter, which is a real sweet spot. It's 10.8 millimeters thick, which it might even appear thicker just visually, but it's actually super thin. And then you're getting 48.5 millimeters lug to lug. This is all 316L stainless steel, brushed and polished, and you can see really beautiful transitioning there in between that high polish bevel, and then the brushing on the top of the case, and then the sides of the case almost look like they're more kind of machine marks versus after brushing there. So very cool, very clean, geometric, again tying in to that. And then we get into, you know, again into the beautiful nature of the design, and you look at that triple stepped fixed bezel, highly polished. You get that push-pull crown that isn't signed, but it wasn't like they didn't sign it out of lack of effort. They still did put a little bit of decoration on it there with the circular portion to contrast the high polish. Very, very nice. And then out back, check this out. Ooh, look at that. Very nice, very well decorated STP movement, Swiss made. You know, this comes out of the Fossil group. Very, very cool. Essentially, you know, very comparable to the architecture that you would find in an ETA or inside of a Salida SW200. And you can see a very nice custom rotor that is really handsomely done. They didn't just paint it, right? Which, I mean, even if you look at some of the SW200s they put in brands like Oris, they are completely undecorated, and then they just like put some red paint on the rotor. So this is really a whole another level. But these are those kind of places where they can really add value, right? By having something that looks really, really nice, you know, and, you know, it's a little bit harder for it to be subjective because that is objectively really well finished. Also, in terms of choosing premium materials like the strap manufacturer, I mean, Deluxe, they make great stuff. I've bought plenty of their stuff aftermarket, really high quality, even down to the buckle itself. Check that out, beautifully signed, that fantastic font there that ties into the era, and then again matching triple step there on that high polished fully milled buckle. So very, very nice, and I think the colorway is also very handsome and very easy to wear. It definitely gives you kind of those springtime vibes going into the summer. So I really do like that. And very quickly, it even has a very cool, and again tying in to that Art Deco style, a very cool little carrying pouch is what it came in. You can see with the gold lettering there, and then all this is very Gatsby, right? Even the zipper being gold tone, I think is very cool. We get into it, you get this cool little, especially like when you think of typically how you would get your cards and whatnot, it's very cool to have the specifications and everything in there. That's actually where this card came from. So while we're here, we'll go ahead and put that back in. And of course, this isn't brand new. This is a watch that has done some press tours and whatnot already. So, you know, don't worry too much about that. Here's the other strap that it comes with. It also, as you can see, has some quick release spring bars. So you can put that there as well. I'm going to leave it on this strap because I think it just looks immaculate on it. And then here, hey, BREMOIR, a time worth remembering. Time is precious, make it yours. This is a really cool presentation, and again, it's about that thematic execution, which I think they really did wonderfully well. So even if you're not super into this aesthetic, you have to be into those details and that execution. I personally think this aesthetic is gorgeous, guys. Look at that dial. That's my favorite part about this. The color choices, the dial, it just looks so different without it looking like it's trying super hard. Like, this looks like a design that could have been around for years and years and years. And yeah, it just happens to all come together here in this particular example. So you also do have a flat sapphire crystal with inner AR coating. In terms of this dial, you get that multi-finished sector dial with that brushed copper highlight juxtaposed against the matte majority of the rest of the dial. You get the applied indices, which are multifaceted and polished there. Not just the numbers, but these beautiful batons that just add a wonderful level of depth there. And then, yeah, clean and simple, polished hands with that nice centerline fold to add some reflective contrast in terms of making sure everything stays very legible at all times. And then it is not super water resistant at only 50 meters of water resistance, but as long as that crown is pushed in, you should be good to go. 20 millimeter lugs, which means this is going to be a strap beast. So if you have something else, maybe you want to throw it on a black, really nice glossy crocodile and really dress it up, you could do that, or you could dress it down with something like a NATO or a suede strap. This has a bit of a kind of a nubuck texture to it. This premium leather strap by the lugs, it does have a taper from 20 down to 18 by the buckle side there, and then of course you notice again that matching triple stepped polished and milled buckle with, again, gorgeous font. I mean, that's just one of those things. They're so hard to nail. A lot of the times people who want to make watches are not necessarily people that have an eye for everything else. I mean, there's people who make watches that don't even have any type of formal training within design. So when you find something that really comes together like this, for me anyway, I just can't help but really appreciate it. So with that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this thing wears really well. It fits under the cuff really easily there. And yeah, this is just a very handsome piece. Of course, if I get it up too close to the camera, it's going to give you a little bit of lens distortion and appear a little bit larger than it truly is. So to keep that aspect ratio a little bit truer to what your eye will perceive, what I'll do is I will tighten up the shot here, and you guys can get a more detailed look while still getting the nice aspect ratio again. And you can see here, guys, this is just, oh man, there's something about this color combination. I know some of you might think it's a little over the top, a little bit too much, but I think in the terms of watches, you can't have too much pop, guys. I mean, this could be the only thing of color that you're gonna wear, and it's really going to stand out, right? Or you could just pair it something, just bright and light and feeling like the spring or summer there. It just, again, it captures a really interesting aesthetic that you just don't get on every watch. And again, that's why the dress watch space is so challenging, because a lot of the times less is more with dress watches, but that's only if you're going to be dealing with that really traditional minimalist aesthetic. Here, the aesthetic is Art Deco, so you're going to be looking at some great ornate details, and I just dig that. And I really, if you guys check out their website, there's a real appreciation again for the time. It's not like they were just inspired by one aspect. It's definitely a multifaceted approach to how they created this brand, and really the love affair and admiration that they have with that time period. And it really, really shows. So I dig this. There's like really nothing like it on the market today. And there should be more, watches that just tell a story, that are just, different than just a cheaper version of something that already exists. I love that they did something very new and very bold here within a space that, again, is very hard to come in and add a big value proposition, just because the typical, the type of watch itself, it doesn't really allow you much space. It's not like you're going to put this on a bracelet with a quick adjust clasp, right? So there's only so many things you can do to really entice buyers, and I think they do so much of that with their choices in premium, materials, premium finishes, and then of course really nice eye-popping designs and colorways. So with that said, there is some loom on here, so although it is not the a loom beast like a tool watch would be, let's go ahead and set up for that. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, another cool feature is that it's a very unique loom, right? Like, you probably weren't expecting that in terms of the way the loom was going to look, And a lot of it has to do with just how much they have going on this dial. But I do really appreciate the fact that they did use loom. Of course, you know, maybe your cardinal directions aren't going to be as easy to tell unless, of course, there is some level of light source, which does make it a lot easier. Then once you see to the numerals 12, then you know where 12 o'clock is. So, and then honestly, if this thing's on your wrist, you should have a decent orientation of where the dial is anyway. But man, look at this dial. Look at the way it plays. Because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to be coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or maybe just spending time, you know, in your favorite automobile. So it's nice to see what these colors, finishes, and textures render like in less than optimal lighting. And I gotta say, wow, this one really impresses. Normally, I'm just paying attention to the way the light glides over that nice, you know, brushing there, that satin finish, looking at the luster and how crisp the high polish is. Look at those bevels just glowing away right here in the reflection. But now look at this dial. It's not just a simple sunray dial or a basic, you know, but also very complex, a lot of the times, textures that you're going to see on a lot of texture dials today. This takes the art of that sector dial, you're breaking it down, but now you're also getting that beautiful play in finishing, in textures, where it just gives you such great kind of floating effect there, where that ring and that disc, the way it captures the light, is just contrasting really well off of the satin kind of matte dial that is just capturing light again in a totally different way. It's just reflecting it back, maybe absorbing it a little bit, while you get a lot more play from the light on that brushing. My gosh. So this thing is a real treat and feast for the eyes. Closing thoughts on the wrist. You know, that broad sweeping contour lays extremely well over your wrist, and might not look the thinnest because it is, you know, kind of a flatter geometric kind of slab side, but they did do those beautiful chamfers and bevels, which do break things down. It's just kind of a design choice, but I feel like that also gives it a certain element, again, within that architecture style of the Art Deco stylings of, you know, old school buildings and whatnot. So it gives you a nice solid base plate there. But again, it still finds a way to lay extremely well on the wrist. Even the case back feels a bit recessed. In terms of model variants, there's 4 other dial color options. You get a brown and copper. Copper being that, you know, inner circular portion on the sector, or black and silver, medium blue and copper, or then light blue and silver. In terms of comparable models, due to the level of design and execution, this really feels less comparable to other micro brands, and probably more akin to something you'd find from Longines costing a good amount more, unless you're talking like gray market prices or, you know, stuff that nobody wants. So that's really how impressed I am with this piece. Again, I would really liken this to something with a lot more heritage, a lot more scale, because of how dynamic they were able to design this and the level of execution that they were able to finish this with. So for me, guys, bottom line, as long as you can appreciate the way this watch looks, you'll absolutely find a ton of value in all of its little unique ornate details and bold design choices. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.